Quinn Padilla, welcome to Bitches of Bad Words, Bitch Sesh. I'm so excited to have you on.
I'm so glad we were finally able to make it happen.
Oh gosh, because there's a backstory. So we did try to do this, and then the universe or Mercury in retrograde or something got in the way, and we tried to record and we couldn't. So I always kind of think of like these happy accidents that happen. Like there's a reason why it didn't work that day, because now everything on your Instagram since then has been really ramped up and awesome. And so now we have more to talk about.
Perfect.
Well, you are a baddie, and I found you like I find all my new besties these days on the Scram. And I want to talk to you about like what made you start this page? Where's your like how did you arrive? Let's talk about your journey. Let's start at the beginning.
Yeah. Well, so I started like kind of with the Instagram piece. If I'm going to start there, is I was married to an abusive man for about 10 years, and I started my Instagram page as like a form of expression, or as a form of expression of freedom. You know, I was controlled and told what I could do, who I could talk to, what I could wear, what I could post, what, you know, basically every single part of my life was controlled. And so I was really into fitness, and I've been into CrossFit for a very long time. I've been a coach since like 2007. And so I started it as like a fitness page, and I started kind of sharing like my fitness journey and, you know, nutrition stuff. And slowly but surely it started to morph into sharing kind of my journey through life. I'd always been creative in the realm of writing, and so it turned into this like creative outlet where I would share things. And early on people would say like, oh, your post really inspired me. And so very often in the beginning stages of like posting on social media, I would start to feel kind of like, oh, this is pointless. You know, why am I posting? And, you know, why am I spending all this time on social media? And then I would, you know, always get a message from somebody being like, you know, you inspired me to like take care of myself today, or you inspired me to like keep going back to the gym, or whatever it was. And then as I started to share more of my personal life, like about my divorce and going through grad school and being a single mom and having 3 kids, I, you know, more and more people started to reach out to me and started to ask me questions. And I would have friends from long ago that I had met who would be like, hey, I'm going through a divorce right now. Like, thank you for sharing, because it made me feel not so alone. You know, my Instagram kind of evolved on its own and found its own path. Like it was this, I always wanted it to be like very authentic and not forced. And I really did struggle for a while, because again, it started out as a fitness page, but then I like was sharing more of my life and more about abuse recovery. And then in 2020, my ex-husband, he died by suicide. And, you know, that really kind of like sparked a new level of talking about my life and my journey and what I had been through and what my kids were going through and the grief. And it truly morphed into this realm of like abuse recovery and post-separation abuse and kind of all of those things, educating there. Since that time, I've finished my master's in social work, became a licensed therapist, and it kind of like also gone more towards the path of coaching, like abuse recovery coaching. So that I would say about 90% of my clients are now in the abuse realm, either in trying to leave or recovering from abusive relationships. And I've just found so much power and comfort and, you know, resilience. Like it really just fuels my fire every single day to work with the clients that I work with, and also to kind of build this community online that At one point it felt really frivolous, and now it feels so powerful and so impactful.
I love that evolution. And I love that, like, you got on social media. Everybody has this like imposter syndrome. They like, why am I posting? What the hell? Like, when I started this show, we would even talk about it. I'm like, I'm going to speak to an audience of like maybe one, and it's probably my dad. So, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, what the hell? And so it feels weird. And then you go out there and you put yourself out there, which is like hard to do and sometimes dangerous and emotionally vulnerable. But when that one person comes back and they're not related to you, says, hell yeah, that's like that little kerosene, just a little bit more fuel to that fire. And it's kind of like super cool that you're posting in one way about like taking care of yourself, but while you're going through abuse. Like, that's not easy to show up and do that ever. And it's not easy to take care of yourself while you're being abused.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think one of the crazy things that I talk about frequently is that when I was in an abusive relationship and the post-separation abuse that I was enduring, I didn't have any of the language for it. So like, I actually didn't identify my abusive marriage as abusive until years later, and probably didn't even start using that word until after my ex-husband passed away. And so, a huge passion of mine is education. And that's why I put so much content out online, because I think that if women can actually understand what they're going through, it will give them a lot more power. Because if you don't know what gaslighting is, if you have no concept of how that even works, how are you even going to be able to get out of a situation? Like, your reality is so distorted, you don't even understand what's going on.
I love that you're saying that, because I imagine that if someone's listening right now, I did the same. I Googled like, what is this person doing? I wish there was like ChatGPT at the time, because I probably would have figured it out a lot sooner or something. Like, but I would be Googling these things because I'm like, why? Like, they say these things or this is happening, and I didn't know what gaslighting. I'd heard the term, but didn't understand what it meant, and I definitely didn't understand. Like, I was gaslighting myself. Like, I was like, this must be a me problem. I can't communicate. I can't this. I can't. All the things that they tell you, and then you're sitting there going like, as if you really want to use the A word. I want to use other A words, but like the abuse word is tough. Like, it's like no one wants to be like in that category on the best day, but we have to name it to heal from it. Right. And like, but once you name it, and you have to do something about it. So I also wonder too, like, do you have people who you're helping, maybe you yourself? It's like, once you
it's really interesting that you say that, because I have worked with clients who have come to me not because my broader scope is trauma. So I do brain spotting and EMDR and, trauma healing work. I do IFS, and I've had clients who come to me for trauma work, and I believe kind of in the powers of the universe that they like ended up with me on purpose. And I have definitely had clients who they kind of know that they're in an abusive like they know something's off. They know something's wrong. They know something's not right. They're miserable. They don't feel good. They're consistently trying to improve themselves, which is why they're in therapy or coaching in the first place. And I have actually asked one of my clients who I knew was really resistant to that A word abuse. I was like, do you want to know what, like what's going on? And she at first she was like, I don't want to know. Like, she knew, but she didn't want to know. And then I remember, one session, it was undeniable, the scenario that she was in. And she was like, I'm in an abusive relationship. And I was like, yep, that's what's happening. But it's such a hard time. It's so hard getting there, because like you said, once you get to that point, once you acknowledge that this is abuse, which there's these men do not change, then you have to make a choice to either stay in the relationship and continue to endure the abuse or leave. There's not a lot of other options.
No, there isn't. And I love that you said this. I was speaking to someone like just yesterday and I asked, like, does a tiger change its stripes? They don't. We know this. It's like they're not going to change. And I even sort of sussy about the self-aware narcissists that are out. Like, I'm just sort of like, I'm not sure how I feel about anybody who's like, yes, hi, I'm an abuser and I'm reformed. Like, I'm all for it, but we don't need to stick around in those relationships while somebody else is trying to figure out their shit. And we can't take care of anybody like that when we are needing to take care of ourselves, our children. It's very much okay. You've been told for so long that you're selfish. It's all about you, when they flip the script on you, but you really do need to take care of yourself. And if somebody truly is an abusive person, I hope that there's reform. I hope that they can change. But I just want to tell everybody that's listening, like, you don't need to wait around for them to do that.
Well, and also they're like, it doesn't happen. I used to be a little more shy about saying that they don't change, but now I just say it flat out because honestly, saying that there is a possibility of change is enough to keep somebody in an abusive relationship. And to me, that's dangerous to keep somebody in an abusive relationship because of, femicide. And also what you mentioned about this like self-aware narcissist, I believe that it is really dangerous. Like the pathologization of abuse and kind of this like weaponization of therapeutic language in the realm of saying like, a lot of abusers now, they go to therapy and they learn all of these words, about therapy, like, oh, I have a wounded inner child, or I'm avoidant, or I'm anxious, or this is what, why I'm acting this way. And they really like prey on that empathy of their victim who can say like, they want to have that openness to the person that they've committed themselves to and say like, oh, I can be, understanding and I can be forgiving because I see that this person is hurting. And so therefore like it's going to keep me in the relationship. But they really like weaponize that therapeutic language. And I think that is like one of the most dangerous things that I see coming up right now.
Wow. That is so powerful because that is exactly, if you think about these people, pathological people, narcissists, what have you, you are the supply. So of course they're going to do whatever they can to keep that supply. And if that means that they have to go and feign, use these words and like touch on I love the empathetic side, because then we are healers, we're fixers, we want to fix it. And then we're just sitting here still staying in the shit, not getting what we need for ourselves. And we're all focused back on them. So we're giving them even like more supply.
Yeah. And I think this also needs to be clear because in my story, my ex-husband died by suicide 2 years after we got divorced, but he had threatened suicide many times while we were together. I mean, starting within the first like couple months of being together, there was that threat. If you leave me, I'll kill myself. Or if you leave me, I'll kill you. Or, there was always a threat of somebody dying and, but more so the threat of suicide for sure. And the pressure put on me to save him and, the pressure put on me of you're the only one that is going to be able to like keep me alive. And I think it's important for people to understand that you cannot save your abuser. You are their victim, not their savior. And there are other people, organizations, resources that are out there and that are available for people who are struggling with mental health crises, but you are not the person that can do that saving. And it is not okay for somebody to place that type of weight onto you when they are also simultaneously abusing you.
So is the threat of suicide a tactic? I mean, obviously he followed through with it afterwards. And if tell me when you don't want to talk anymore about that part of it, but I've been told this, I've seen it. I've heard other besties talking about, they always threaten to kill themselves. And so like, of course, I'm going to come back and sit with you. I'm going to come back and help you because I don't want your blood on my hands.
Right. And so I think that this is a very important topic, and that is there's an intersection of suicidality as a tactic and of manipulation tactic in abusive relationship, but that can also coincide with like true depression and suicidality. Like meaning that both of those can be happening at the same time. So somebody can be using it as an abuse as a tactic to manipulate you and also be actively suicidal. And when that intersection happens, that is when it becomes like so powerful, because for myself in my situation, and I do know a lot of other women who are like, no, I really think he's going to kill himself. And when the threat is so real, that's when it becomes really powerful. And so that's why I go back to this, you know, that you are not the one to save them. It's not that you have to like remove all empathy for that person and say like, that's not my problem. He's just being manipulative. I don't care. I'm going to leave anyways. It's, I believe that they are suicidal. I believe that they might harm themselves. And I'm going to pass this on to somebody that can actually care for them, because I am not the person to do it. The victim is not the person to save the abuser. So
can I ask you something on that,
Yeah.
though? Like if someone's listening right now and then their partner, their abuser, let's use the term, is threatening suicide, who do you go to? Because we know this negative advocate role of, you know, the flying monkeys, and then you go and you tell that person, hey, they're suicidal, then that person is like, then they're like, you're making it up. No, they're not that. Like, this is just, I might have experienced this. I might have heard about this, let's just say. And they come back at you and like, you now are the problem. Like you've made it up, or you're like, no, that didn't happen. Or, you know, so like, I just want to ask you as the professional, who do you go to? Or like, or what if you don't say anything and then they do like, what's the right course of action?
Yeah. So I always say like, call the police. Call the police. They can go check on them and they can make sure that they're okay. So, and this is obviously, there's going to be so many different scenarios. Like if you're in the house with them, I would get away and call the police.
Yeah.
If you are in a separate space and they call you and they say that they're suicidal, call the police and tell them that. Because this is kind of the situation that it puts them in. If they are actively suicidal, right? Then you're going to call the right people that are going to be able to save them and keep them safe, right? You've done your due diligence, you've done your job to make sure that this person is going to stay alive, right? And if they're not actively suicidal and they're just using that as a threat, and you call the police when they try to use that as manipulation, instead of engaging, instead of going over there, instead of staying on the phone, you just say, my only response is going to be to call the police. You call the police and they're not actively suicidal, they're not going to do that again, because they don't want the cops to like keep coming over, right? Like they don't want that on their record. They don't want that exposure. They don't want that kind of thing happening. So like, to me, in either scenario, you respond with that boundary of, I'm not going to engage with this type of threat. If you are actively suicidal, I will call the police, and that's going to be my only course of action.
That is so important, because again, if it's a tactic, you can't walk into that, because that's dangerous. If they are actively suicidal, I mean, I would imagine that when you hear these like suicide, homicide situations, maybe perhaps the victim did go back to be empathetic and help, and then that person lost their mind. So it's like the danger is not worth, checking on them. Send the police. I love that. Please go check out our Patreon. It is growing. There is a badass community handing over there. Patreon.com/bitch is a bad word. There's free tiers. There's paid for tiers. The paid for tiers give you ad-free listening, merch drops, merch discounts. We have a private Discord server where every single member is vetted. We personally look at their license so you can build your bestie gang, rebuild your network, rebuild your net worth over there on Patreon. Patreon.com/bitch is a bad word.
when I got divorced, I was a stay-at-home mom, 3 kids. My husband was a Green Beret. He was in the military, so special operations, which is another level of like fear when you're in a relationship with somebody whose job is to like kill people for a living. That's a little terrifying.
Were you the one who was telling me about like he would come home and tell you how he could put a body in a Pelican briefcase?
Yeah. So early on, we were on base. We'd just gotten married and we're driving down. And this is such a good thing that people need to be more aware of. Again, kind of on the like education piece, that like they will drop these things like that seem innocent, but they're really trying to like put this idea in your head to provoke fear in you in the relationship. So like we're driving down, we've been together for maybe a few months and we're on base, and he's like, "You see those woods over there?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, a couple green berets came home and they caught their wives cheating, so they hacked them up and they put them in Pelican boxes and they buried them out in the woods." And he was like, kind of gives me this look of like, it's a subtle threat, like don't you dare ever wrong me, essentially.
I have chills like all over my legs. Wow.
Little terrifying. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And you're like, okay. Did he laugh afterward? Like, how did he just like, or he's like, you believe him?
It wasn't like overt, it wasn't like, "I'll do that to you," it was more just that subtle threat, and then like when abusers say things like, I'll kill you if you ever leave me, ha 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 ha, like these kinds of like things that they play off as like a joke, and I look back and I'm like, how did I even like think that was funny? But I think that there was truly a part of me as a young woman who was so in love with the idea of this like passionate, obsessive, like, "You're the only one for me, it's us against the world" type of like mentality. I was craving that. I just wanted somebody, I wanted to be a person's number one, and I wanted them to be my number one, and so I loved that idea. And so when he came in with this like super passionate, love bombing behavior, I ate it all up, like I would kill for you, I would die for you kind of thing.
Yeah. No, that's like, I'm so happy you're saying that, because that's what you feel, this like, it's either this Romeo, Juliet, Bonnie and Clyde, us against them. So when they are, and you do, I ate it up too. I loved it. I was like, yeah, we can do all things like together. And, I need this. And so, okay. So you've got a man who's a Green Beret. He knows how to use a gun. He knows how to chop up a body and put it in a Pelican case and bury it in the woods. And he, like, all those dangerous things. How are you sleeping? Like, how are you, like, so tell me how you get to leaving first.
Yeah. So we met when I was 22. We got married. I always feel a little embarrassed saying this because I work in abuse recovery now. But I was a different person then. We got married 3 weeks after knowing each other. And I mean, no, first red flag, right?
Right.
And he deployed very quickly. He was in the military the entire time. He went to Afghanistan for a year, 9 months after we got together. Came home, we had our first child, many more moves and PCSs and duty stations, and with 2 more kids. So we had 3 kids together. A lot of what kept me in it just personally was this concept of like, well, are you going to leave me before I go on deployment? Are you going to leave me while I'm on deployment? Are you going to leave me when I get home from a deployment? Are you going to leave me while I'm in training? And so I was always like either before, during, or after a deployment or a training. And so there was never a good time to leave. And he was gone very frequently. I mean, he was gone probably like 6 to 8 months a year, every year. And so there was a lot of the time that like I didn't necessarily have to like deal with him except for having to have my phone glued to me all the time. I mean, God forbid I missed a phone call. It would be like hell for me if I missed a call. You know, it was, what are you doing? Who are you with? Are you cheating on me? Kind of stuff. So, you know, finally we ended up in Florida, which is where we live now. We live near Destin, Florida, and it's gorgeous here. So I'm very grateful for that part. And I would say, you know, I don't know why it took me 9 years of fighting, you know, he would call me a cunt and a bitch and a whore, probably like multiple times a week.
Can we just make a song that's like cunt and a bitch and a whore, cunt and a bitch and a whore? Like,
yeah. His other favorite was like, you're so fucking white trash. Cause abusers will find your like core wounds. They find those like really core deep wounds. And I grew up really poor in a really dysfunctional home. My dad was in prison. My brother was schizophrenic. He beat me up every day. My mom was a single mom. She's in recovery. I mean, there was just so much dysfunction growing up. And I had a lot of like wounds that I hadn't worked through. And he would really play on that because his family was upper middle class. And, you know, I wasn't a part of that essentially. And so he really loved to pick on that one pretty good. And so that also helped him when I wanted to leave. He's like, oh, you're going to be a poor single mom, like white trash, just like your mom, you know, like carry that on.
Fucking narc vault. I fucking hate that narc vault. It's where they fucking put it all. And then they like, pew, 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 pew.
They
fucking white trash, be trash. You're just like your mom. Just like your mom.
Just like your mom. And I'm like,
just like your mom. You're like, fuck you. Fuck you. But it's so powerful. It works.
It works. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They find it and they play on it. And again, these are things that I've like untangled later through like my own therapy and my own work. And that is, I've discovered, and I don't know how many people out there can like really connect with this, but you know, they talk about trauma responses, right? Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And most people have heard of fight or flight. Some people have heard of freeze or fawn as like the other two that they've added. But I kind of discovered that like my initial trauma response is fight. So I didn't go into submissive mode ever. I was very much like, you know, he'd be like, you fucking bitch, you fucking cunt. I'm like, you're a fucking asshole. Why are you talking to me like this? Like, I couldn't wrap my brain around it, even though I was like continuing to stay in it. And I think a part of what kept me in the relationship was that I was never broken. I never felt like he broke me. I never felt like I hit this space of rock bottom, where I was just like crying in the corner and I was like so sad. I think that I remember having this realization one day when he was cussing me out in front of our kids and my daughter's like hiding behind the couch and he's like yelling and screaming and he's terrifying. And I was like, why am I using all of this strength? Like all of this like natural strength and ability that like I have and these like personal gifts to fight these unworthy battles. Like this battle is not worth my fight. And it was like that in combination with obviously like all of the abuse was like, I'm so done. Like, why do I keep fighting for this thing that's like so absolutely miserable?
I love that. I'm a fight response too. And then but then also that leads you to believe that you're part of the problem, that you're like an equal contributor to the fucking madness, or you know, I shouldn't have yelled back, or I shouldn't have done this or whatever. So then that keeps you trapped too, because then you're like, you don't, and they can use that against you. And they do all these.
They're like, well, you yelled too. You yelled too. And I like, I had another realization the other day, actually, in one of my sessions with a client where, you know, she acknowledged that her trauma response is also a fight. And I was thinking about it, I was like looking back at times when I should have been terrified, but I just didn't allow myself to be terrified. I should have been scared when somebody said that they were going to kill me if I left. I should have been scared when my ex-husband would put a gun between us when we had a conversation. I should have been scared, but my instinct was fight instead of fear. And so I didn't allow myself to go there. So when people would ask me, are you scared of him? I was like, no, because I felt so strong in myself, even though I should have been terrified.
Right. Right. Oh, that is powerful. That is like, we need to dive deeper in this in like another episode, just have it all about, because when you think victim, you think the person cowering in the corner, crying and scared. And then you're like, they're helpless. They can't do anything. But no, you're like, I didn't understand that there are these other components and pieces. So I love that. If you're a fighter, you don't feel scared, but fuck, he's got a gun in in his lap.
Right.
Shit, I'm scared.
Right. I love that you use that word victim, because like I again didn't let myself like go into that mode. But that's another thing that like has been coming up with a lot of my clients, is they're like, oh, I don't want to be the victim. I don't want to play the victim, blah, 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 because abusers will weaponize victimhood. But I think it's so sad to acknowledge that like being a victim isn't inherently bad. Like being a victim is actually a really sad thing, but that like abusers have like twisted and contorted it in a way that's like, oh, you're just the victim. It's like, no, actually I am the victim. Like you're a perpetrator. I am the victim in this situation. Like that's not a bad thing inherently. Like, yeah, it's bad to have somebody like harm you, but the shame belongs to the perpetrator, not the victim themselves.
Oh my God. Yeah. I've been called a fake victim. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means, but it hurts. I'm not sure what that means. Like, you know what? But now I realize like it's weaponizing the term. It's like making you feel like you shouldn't own the shit that they're doing to you, that they're not the problem. They are the problem. It is not a you thing. It's a them thing. So, okay. So you're in this situation with him. You are a fighter. And then you decide like, hell, fuck no, I'm out. I'm done. How did you leave?
So to be fair, like I just like many other women in these situations, I tried to leave before, obviously unsuccessfully. One time I actually even fully moved out. And then he like, pulled me back in. There was a lot of financial abuse. Again, that was a term that I wasn't aware that was happening. He was working. I was a stay-at-home mom. And so like, in good times, it was, I'm going to support you. I want you to stay home with the kids. This is fine. But then anytime, I wanted to do something with our finances or maybe even leave, it was like, this is my money. Like, what are you going to do about it? So there was a lot of financial abuse and control that existed that prevented me from moving forward. Because again, like now I'm here in Florida with 3 kids. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I did have my bachelor's in psychology that I'd finished while we were together. But all in all, like didn't have a job, didn't have savings, didn't have family that was able to like support me or like give me any money. And so I was like, I'm going to figure this out. I got first and last month's rent from his family for a place that I'd found. And I like begged and pleaded with the landlord. Like, I don't know how I'm going to get the money to pay you every month, but I promise I will pay you. And so I moved out despite many threats and a lot of, again, I didn't really let myself go into that fear, although I probably should have been a little scared. Moved out with 3 kids. And one of my saving graces was that I always knew I wanted to become a therapist. And so I looked into grad schools and I was able to borrow student loans in order to like supplement my income. So I did get a little bit of child support and a little bit of alimony. And then I borrowed against my student loans while I was in school. I also did Uber and cleaned condos when he had the kids, and just figured it out. And I was
Yes.
poor.
Yes.
I was really broke for a long time. We ate lots of spaghetti and peanut butter and jelly. And I had a client the other day who was, she worried about like finances and stuff. And I was like, have you ever been poor? And she was like, no. I was like, it's not that bad. Like, you just kind of just don't do stuff, and you just suck it up. You go do free things with your kids. You go to the park, you go to the beach,
Because I'm going to tell
eat
you
mac and
something.
cheese.
There is nothing worse than having money and being miserable. I've been there. And, being a kept woman and not being able to make decisions, have financial autonomy, emotional autonomy, anything. And there's nothing worse than going on a really expensive vacation with somebody who's hell bent on fucking ruining it.
Yeah.
So I'd rather be poor. Like I left with a lot, and I left with nothing rather, and I had a lot, and then I was like, why am I happier? I'm happier going to the park. I'm happier eating freaking spaghetti. Like I'm happier than I've ever imagined being, because I'm not in money doesn't make you happy, and money doesn't make an abusive person nicer. In fact, I would argue that it may make them worse. So like, yes, get it done. Do what you have to do. It's like, and you will rebuild. And the financial component, because the financial abuse is real. I love that you're talking about that, because you don't know that you're in that until you're in it. And it's like, if you can kind of just take a step back and realize that as long as you are happy and fulfilling and like the safe person, your kids don't give a fuck about the trip or the Air Jordan, or like they're not going to remember.
They don't care
long term.
They don't care. Yeah. And I know a lot of women have this fear of like, oh, he's going to be the Disneyland dad and he's going to have all this money and I'm going to have $0 and they're not going to want to be with me because, he spoils them. And that's, it's all true. Most abusers, when there's financial abuse and there's disadvantages to the mom, it all happens. They'll go take them on shopping sprees and they'll spoil them and they'll take them to Disney, like literally Disneyland dads. But nothing comes close to the comfort of a safe home and a safe person, and especially a safe mother. And there's nothing that ever will compare to that. And I will tell you, like, as a trauma therapist who works with people 20 years down the road when they've been in these homes where their mom has left, and they're always grateful that their mom left, and they do see who the dad was at the end of the day. They're like, yeah, my dad wasn't like the best. He did try to like spoil us and stuff, but ultimately my mom was like the one that was keeping us safe. So
I love that. That's like that hope and inspiration. And so I want to like circle back around for a little bit just to kind of close out a really important, topic that we were discussing of suicide. And I mean, your ex, you leave, then I'm understanding you went through, what you didn't know at the time and what you don't know. Financial abuse, post-separation abuse, litigate abuse. I'm sure like all of the things that they use to continue to control and fuck with you and hurt you, abuse you. And again, you're sitting there, you don't know what you're in. You just kind of like, it takes on a new form. You don't have to like live with them every day. So then maybe too, even in the fight sense, you're like, well, I don't give a shit, whatever. He's just trying to still hurt me. Like it just shape shifts, but you have a break. You get to like sleep by yourself. And oh God, let me tell you, that sleeping by yourself feels so good.
it's amazing.
Especially if there's a fucking gun in between the two of you.
Right?
That must feel really good.
No, thank you.
So yeah, you leave. And when you left, is he still like threatening the suicide and you're having to deal with that? Or did you go no contact? Like, how did you eventually, like, how did it happen?
Yeah. So, the threat wasn't always on the table. I mean, like him consistently, as in him consistently making the threat. The incident that I told you about earlier, where I'd gone over and, you know, kind of washed my hands of it, that happened post separation. But there was a lot of post separation abuse. I didn't know what I was in, and I didn't realize that the cycle of abuse was still happening post separation. So there was the tension building phase, the explosive phase, and then love bombing phase. Even though he and I weren't in the relationship, those things were still happening. And I can look back now and be like, oh my gosh, that's what he was doing. Because, and many women can relate to this, maybe even you, that all of a sudden they show up bright and sunny and they're like, oh, I'm going to give you some extra cash for whatever, to get some groceries, right? Or whatever it is. They're being nice, they're being sweet, and you're kind of like, well, I'm going to lap this up. For me, I was like, man, I really would like to, go grocery shopping and not have to like put things back, kind of thing. And so, not knowing what he was doing, I continued to engage in the cycle of abuse unknowingly. I would accept the love bombs, right? And so, one really good example is he would be like, I'm going to bring over dinner and drop off dinner. We lived in the same town. And so he would come over with dinner and I'd be like, oh, thank you so much. Like, it's so nice to like have food. Again, we share 3 kids together. And then he would be like, well, and my kids are in the doorway with me. I thought he's just dropping it off. And he's like, well, aren't you going to let me eat dinner with you? And I'm like, puts me in a position where I have to say yes in front of my kids. And so I'm like, sure, come in and have dinner with us. So he comes in and he has dinner. And then, sure enough, he's like, well, can I watch a movie with you? Kids are like, yeah, Dad, watch a movie with us, right? Again, putting me in that position so that if I say no, I'm the villain, whatever. And then he's like, well, I'm going to help you put them to bed. And then I start to get, anxious and like, I'm very uncomfortable at this point because now the kids are in bed and now he's following me into the bedroom. And I'm like, okay, you need to leave. And, an explosive fight ensues. Why are you making me leave? You're such a whore. You're probably effing other guys. And all of the like fight and things and like typical behavior. And so it's like, they really get you with that like love bombing. You want to like see the best in people. And so I fell for it. I mean, I fell for it every single time. Like, oh, he's being nice. No, they're never being nice. It's always a tactic. It is always a tactic. And so you just have to be like super prepared for that. But that's, that with he was stalking me, but he'd show up places and, he was like, oh, it's a small town. Like, of course we're going to be in the same spot. And I'm like,
oh my God, that happened to me. And I'm like, how do you know I'm here? Yes. It doesn't matter how small your town is. Like, what are the chances? Oh my God.
So,
and I like that you're saying it's so important to say that, like the love bombing or the cycle of abuse is still happening, even if you've left, if you're having contact with them. And you do because you have kids and they use the kids as pawns in their game. And they're manipulating everybody. And they're also, what's crazy is the control that they have. I love that you said, because it's like, they're only serving themselves. So if you think that they're bringing food over and that's like, how basic, right? How bright, like bringing the mom he should have dinner at your, like he should be giving enough money to have great dinners at your house every day, right? But we're still like eating the breadcrumbs. We're still accepting the basic bullshit. And then in our minds, if you were like me, I'm thinking, well, I've seen healthy co-parenting with like divorced people where they're like sitting next to each other at the game or they go out to dinner. And so I was always like saying yes to like, let's go out to dinner with the kids. And then like we go our separate ways, but we're sitting there at dinner. And I always knew it felt wrong. Like there was a part of me that didn't feel good about it. Cause I'm like, what's going to happen? And what I realized, it was back to that love. They're still taking inventory, asking me what I'm doing. What are you up to then just fucking weaponize it later, because you can't have a normal relationship with an abuser when it ends. So understand that there is no, like, get rid of the fantasy that you're going to be Gwyneth Paltrow and Chris Martin, because it's not happening.
It's not, you're right. It's not happening. And I think a lot of women hope and really want, like you said, that fantasy of like, we can co-parent and we can still have like family dinners and we can still have like family holidays and all this stuff. And you're totally right that in an abusive relationship, anybody who is abusive to any extent, you are not going to be able to have a healthy co-parenting relationship with them. It's just not happening. And so the sooner you can acknowledge that and realize that and figure out how to like parallel parent or whatever method you decide to use and like place appropriate boundaries and decide like, this is what I'm willing to accept and not accept. This is how I'm going to like really like take back power and control over myself and the kids in my home, then the sooner you're going to like get to freedom and happiness, because staying in that like post-separation abuse cycle is, pretty awful.
Oh, my kids would come home and say, this is Dad's house. And I was like, what? Yeah, Dad says it's his house because he pays for it. He pays you money for it. And I'm like, no, it's my house. It's our house. It's not his house. But like, I just remember these like little tidbits where I'm like, oh my God, like he's going back and like talking about it to the kids. And now they're like confused. Everything is Dad's still. And I'm like, oh, when I opened my eyes and started realizing like what was happening, and then any situation where, there was a shared gift or, I did try to go back and do a holiday together. That was a fucking nightmare. It's like, you can't do it. So it's just better to just know like your peace is here. And also too, like the kids get confused. I think even in the best case scenario, because they're like, they behave one way with one parent and they behave another way with another parent. So like if you're trying to like coexist together, you're probably confusing the shit out of the kid because they don't know which personality to show up as when you're both there. And I always like when I go to a game, for example, now and I see my kids, I don't even like, I'm not worried if like one of them doesn't want to come over and stand next to me because I'm realizing they don't know what to do. They're just like, I don't know who I'm supposed to be right now. I'm this version of myself.
Well, and it's good that you don't put the pressure on them to, choose sides or act away or, anything like that. And I think that's like the best approach to it of like, whatever makes them comfortable in that moment, because they probably are confused, being stuck in those types of situations. But I think one of the best things that we can show our children is that we are, especially as women, is that we are unwilling to accept abuse, abusive behavior, maltreatment to any extent. And I think it's a very powerful message to send to our children, again, particularly to our young girls, when we do not go back into that fawn response when interacting with our ex or our abuser in front of them. Because when, I teach my kids, I'm like, if somebody shows you who they are, if somebody's mistreating you, you don't have to like engage with them. You don't have to be nice to them. And I'm not saying like to anybody, like you can be cordial and you can be polite and all of those things, but you don't have to go into these situations of like, hi, how are you? And, all these niceties, you can say, hey, and keep your distance, and you don't have to continue to expose yourself to that like level of vulnerability with that person.
That is such great advice. Okay. So I have to just ask you too, like just to, cause I keep going. This is what I do. I go on these freaking like little they're not tangents, but like we take the conversation and we like go down to like this exploratory life. And so I love how this show kind of evolves, but I know there's somebody listening, like tell us how it happened. So you go in, you've told the parents, I've washed my hands of this. I can't take this responsibility anymore, which is like such a brave move, by the way, because like that's a hard thing to probably say and another thing to actually feel, because he's the father of your kids. So there is that piece, right? That worry, like what if he does it? Were you worried that he would ever kill the kids?
He never stated that explicitly. I was much less worried that he would kill me or the children. But there was definitely there was a time when near the end of the relationship, which was another factor that kind of like contributed to the momentum of getting me to leave, where after we were leaving a team party, and he, I insisted on driving because he was drunk and I wouldn't let him drive. And so he was embarrassed. And, I insisted on driving the car. And I remember he like looked over at me and he was like, "Tread lightly, Quinn. I kill people for a living." And it was those kinds of like subtle threats that I'd like lived with for a really long time. And, plus all of these like murder suicides you see. So like, while I felt very most strongly that his self-harm was the highest possibility, it was still felt like a possibility to me that it could either be me, the kids, all of us, some mixture of that. And so there was a definite fear that existed there. And again, he was a veteran. He'd been deployed many times. He had PTSD, he had TBIs. So, there's that, if he, his impulse control just goes away, what does that mean? What could happen?
Mm-hmm.
So that was like a fear for sure.
Jeez, that's a lot. That's so much. And then you still have to send your kids there. Like, that to me, that's like the hardest. Did you ever relax? Like, I can't, I'm just like stressed listening to this, like sending the kids there and being like,
yeah, it was definitely terrifying. Unlike a lot of the women I work with, and not all, but some, like I didn't have any finances. Like I didn't have any money to like battle him in court. And so I just had to settle with what the offer was, which was 50-50 custody. And he was gone so frequently. So like, again, he would deploy, he would go on TDY. So really in the end, it ended up being like 80-20. It was not, I had the kids a lot of the time, but I didn't have the option of battling him because I didn't have any finances to battle him, and his family had money and he had money to be able to go to war with me. I was scared that he would even try to take the kids away completely if I put up too much of a fight. And then, after a couple of years, he actually even ended up signing the kids, like all his rights to the kids away so that he could move up to Washington, D.C.
oh, wow. You're like, thank you.
Yeah. He'd met another woman and they got married. And so he signed the kids away. They did not have children. They were married so they got married in January. She deployed soon after they got married. She was also in the military, and she came home, and 5 days after being home from her deployment, he shot himself in front of her.
Oh my God. Did you talk to her?
No. We need a whole episode to go over all the dynamics of the people.
Okay, I'm like, what?
There's a lore.
Wow.
There's a lore.
There is. Holy shit. This is going to be like a compendium. Yeah. Like, we're going to keep doing this. I don't know what that word is. Compendium?
Compendium?
Probably not. Is that a word?
It is a word. Yeah.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yay. Big words on the show today, folks. Did he leave a note? Did he did the impulse control just take over?
It was an impulse. Yeah. This is something that I have spoken with my kids about, and, anybody that asks me about the situation, I truly think that if he had like waited another second, if he had thought about it, I don't really, obviously I wasn't there. I don't know many details. I don't speak to this person. But I think it was like a moment of loss of control that like it happened. It wasn't planned. There was no note. There was no like, I think it was just, that was it. So.
And then you have to talk. So he was in another state. So then she phones but like you've been expecting this call, I would imagine, in some ways.
Some part of me was like, there was shock for sure. And I will say that like having to sit your 3 kids down and tell them that their father died is something I like wouldn't wish on anybody. I mean, and that's kind of where the complexity of my story, hits, is that there is a lot of grief. you know, there is a lot of sadness around the ending of his life. And, you know, my kids are still grieving. It's been 5 years now. They've all grieved in different ways. Um, there's stages of grief that they go through, and they all grieve differently. My oldest has the hardest time because she was, you know, the oldest. She spent the most amount of time with him. There's just so much complexity to it. I went through, you know, I'd spent 10 years with him. I had 3 children with him. And so it wasn't like my heart was just hardened just because I'd had that experience. You know, we'd also done many other things together. And so that hit very hard when he passed away. And I was actually, you know, I had remarried a few months before he passed, to my current husband, Anthony. And the way that he was there for me during that time was, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. It was absolutely beautiful. He was able to hold space for me as I cry. You know, I imagine that it would be hard to watch your partner cry over their ex, and he didn't have trouble holding that space. I mean, he just was always there. He was always there for the kids. He gave us space when we needed to, you know, do whatever we needed to do to remember him or talk about him. And it's never been an issue in our home to share stories or memories or anything like that. And he just has all of the space and for all of us in our grief.
That's so beautiful. And my like heart breaks thinking of your kids like losing their dad, and then the work that it takes to keep going. And, you know, for you, the work it took emotionally and otherwise to be, you know, showing up for your kids every moment and helping them through like the grieving process. Like that is mind blowing to me, how difficult that must have been and still is. And then you know, in that moment too of like how bad he treated you, how abusive he was to you. And then you still have to show, it's like, whoo, that's a lot.
Yeah. The complexity of the grief is hard. That's been one of my like greatest struggles in like my social media and stuff, is like being able to show up authentically, online, be able to share my story, because, you know, there is kind of this pushback, from like veteran communities of like, you're disparaging a dead person. You know, you are speaking bad about somebody who's passed away who can't defend themselves and they're a veteran, and, you know, all of these things. And my answer to that is that if every woman had to be silent in order to protect another person's reputation, we would have no stories. We would have no stories shared. And the reality is that I am actually able to share my story and help other women in the way that I do because he's gone, because I would have lived in fear. And so a lot of women don't even have the option to even have a voice because they live in constant fear. And I mean, that pulls me to other victims. Like there was just the survivors of Epstein, you know, out in DC, you know, on full blast, sharing their story. I can't even imagine the level of terror and fear it would take to speak out and speak up on that level. And so if they have that strength, I pull from that. I'm like, oh my God, if they can do it, if they can have that strength despite all of the, you know, the fear that they probably live with constantly, constant fear and constant backlash and constant pushback, if they can do that, then I can do this. And I like root myself in that strength.
Hell yeah. I love that. Those baddies. I was speaking with Lisa Phillips, who is one of the main women speaking on behalf as a survivor of Epstein. And I was texting with her last night, just like, let's fucking go. You are such a baddie. And I do draw on that same inspiration because there's no safety in staying silent when you don't say anything. And I think we were talking about this earlier. Like I have to be, I've already rung the bell, right? I'm already out here. I'm already doing it. I've already pissed off some people. But what I'm realizing is that my voice is someone else's voice. So I'm giving one person the encouragement or the, the hope that they need. And also like the reality of how fucking hard it is. It's not easy. It's like leaving is not easy, and leaving, it doesn't necessarily mean that the abuse is going to stop. But we have to educate and really help people understand that if you can set yourself up to make great decisions in the aftermath. So like I'm teaching people the things I wish I had done differently. And I would have saved myself a lot of heartache and a lot of, stress. But again, you don't know what you don't know, but the silence is deafening. And when we are like not speaking up and when we're not saying it, we're making it okay. So you going out there and you telling your story, and you are speaking for all the women who are not ready to talk. I'm speaking for all the women who are not ready to talk. All the baddies on the Epstein, they're speaking for all of those women who are not ready. And it's a scary thing, but imagine the change that's happening in the world right now, because we're like banding together and growing this big bad bitch battle of like, we're not scared right now because there's safety in numbers, and we're all realizing, hold on, I can kind of come out of the shadow and be safe as you can be, right? And I love that this movement that's happening. I just feel like, I don't know if you're feeling it, like this sort of shift, like we're talking about it and we're like removing the stigma of the shame of being like a battered woman, like fuck that. Like there's no shame in it. You are not the problem. We're growing the biggest, baddest bestie gang for this.
Absolutely. And I agree. Like it feels so powerful. And like I was sharing before, Instagram and I think the beginnings of social media, when it started to like grow, it felt really frivolous, and I was on my Fit page posting like the thirst traps and, like all that stuff. Like it felt like, what's the point kind of thing. But now you're right. Like there's this entire community of women that are like banding together. And I really like rooted a lot of strength also from like the Giselle Pellicot case that happened in France, where she was like, the shame needs to switch sides. Like you just said, like, this is not our shame. Being in an abusive relationship is not shameful for the victim. It is shameful for the abuser. That's who needs to carry the shame. And we're shifting that, like by speaking out loud, by sharing our stories, because abuse thrives in silence. That's the way it can continue to live. If we continue to protect abusers by claiming that we have to like protect someone's reputation because they did something wrong, like we only perpetuate the issue. And being silent is complacency. Like I really truly believe that.
I love, because you have something on your Instagram right now that we were talking about. I'm going to pull it up because it's so good. And you say here, it was a story, so now it's gone. But the silence, I should have.
I think it says silence is a side.
Yes, silence is a side. Break that down for me.
Yeah. So I think one of the analogies that I like to use when I think about this concept of like the stance of neutrality, there's two sides of the story. Like, there's his side and her side and some truth in the middle. People say all these kinds of bullshit. And, I like to kind of compare it to a different crime, right? Like compare it to like if somebody burglarized your house. Say somebody comes in, they steal all your stuff and they destroy your home and, they leave with everything, right? Nobody's going to come to that situation and be like, well, like, did you leave the door open? Like victim blaming, right? Like they might do that, right? Like the cops might be like, is your door open? But like all in all, they're going to be like, that person was wrong and you were the victim here. And I'm going to stand on that you're right, essentially, like you're the victim and they're the perpetrator.
Yeah.
There's no, like, there's like a right and a wrong. There's a black and white issue. And people try to take this very like gray zone stance of neutrality on abusive behavior. And the truth is that it's very black and white. You're either abusive or you're not. And if you're abusive, that's wrong. Like, you know, like there's nowhere in our society that it should exist, that it's okay. And one of the things that, you know, I'm sure you've read this book, Lundy Bancroft, Why Does He Do That? One of the things that he talks about in the end of his book is how society creates the situation and the acceptance of abusive behavior. And as long as society as a whole is willing to accept and not condemn, explicitly condemn abusive behavior, it will continue to persist. And I think that's where like we have to look at very dangerous institutions and systems that support abusers, like the family court system, like religious institutions and churches and things like that. We have to look at those places where abusers thrive and where they get power. I think we have to start looking at that.
When you have kids and they've moved on, someone was saying like you have to remember the amount of years that you were the supply. So if you were like with the person for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, for 30 years, you were their supply. So many people are like, I can't wait until they move on. And then they're like confused, like, well, they've moved on. They're with somebody else and they're still fucking with me. Like, why? And it's like, well, you're still right. Are you still the supply, or are they in the love bombing phase of that new relationships? And so the mask is on and they don't want it to slip. So then they're still fucking with you. Like, what's your experience there?
I mean, because you're still allowing them to engage in you with that. Like, you're still engaging with the behavior. And like, I had a girlfriend tell me, she's like, a long time ago, she's like, they can't play catch if you don't throw the ball back. Right. And I love that, like that thought that like they're throwing the ball at you and you're catching it and keeping it. Like, I'm not playing this game anymore. I'm not going to engage in these tactics and these behaviors. I'm not going to accept all of these like love bombing things that you're doing in order to pull me back into like this type of relationship. Like, you have to have such strong, firm, solid boundaries with abusers, because otherwise, and I'm not saying that like you set a boundary and they just like, oh, that's a boundary, I'm going to respect it. Like, you're going to have to hold it over and over and over again. And a lot of people like make the mistake of like not setting up kind of the follow through of the boundary itself. So for example, like using this texting thing, right? A boundary that you could place with an abusive partner is like, I will not accept like being spoken to this way via text message or like in any scenario. And so like, if you continue to text me this way, I'm going to move to talking parents app, whatever. And that's the boundary. And where people get mixed up is they'll set the boundary, but then they don't go with the follow through. Because it's like, you know, it feels like too much work, or they don't want to set it or something like that. So you have to, the follow through is the most important part. Okay, now I'm going to like go to the judge and, you know, do a motion to try to make sure that we can get on this app because you're disparaging me, and then following through it. And then when they text you, if you say the judge orders that you like only communicate through this app, and then they send you a text message, you don't respond. You're actually not engaging with them when they're trying to communicate. So it's figuring out how to like hold those boundaries super duper firm. Again, they're not going to like it. They're going to try to jump over it any way, shape, or form that they can. But you just have to hold it. It's, again, that boundary that I was telling you about earlier. If you tell me you're suicidal, my only response is to call 911. And then they tell me they're suicidal and you call 911. There has to be the follow through of that boundary, or else they're just going to try to hop over it.
Right.
Whatever way
empty.
they can.
Like, I love it. So D&E, we say this on the show all the time. Like, that is like D&E, bitches. You don't have to engage. Do not engage. It's like, but I love that you're saying it's that boundary setting and being firm. Because again, this is where I have to remind everybody, it's fucking hard. It's hard to enforce a boundary. It's work. It's hard to say, I know I said it. I do it with my kids. If you do this, you're not getting any game time. And then I'm like, why did I fucking say that? Because of course I'm going to give them game time.
Right.
Like, you know, that was dumb. Now I'm like, here we go. Here's your game.
That's a punishment for me.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like we do it all the time because it's really hard. And so we want to say, you can do hard things. This is going to be hard. The boundary setting is going to be hard. It's going to feel different because you've never had a boundary. You've never flexed a boundary. So they're going to be like, who the fuck is this bitch? And they're probably going to call you one too. Okay, I think that this is the greatest conversation ever. And I could keep talking to you. So we're going to have to do a part 2. And we may even have to do like a segment, like an ongoing segment, some kind of call-in situation. I feel like creatively happening.
I would love that.
You know, like call in with Quinn. It even sounds good. Quinn's call-ins.
It does.
Oh,
I love it.
let us know what you think. Tell me if after you listen to this, send me a DM. Do you want us to do Quinn's call-ins? Because I do. And okay, where can we find you? And do you people like you do virtual assisting? I don't what the fuck, virtual therapy. Like, how do we coaching?
Yeah. So I'm most active on Instagram, but I am kind of also on TikTok. I just started like kind of like building a page there, so I am also on TikTok. So something we didn't really talk about today is that I am a licensed therapist, but I also work mostly in the capacity of life coaching. My specialty is trauma and trauma treatment, which is, if you have been in an abusive relationship, you are likely very traumatized. And so I focus on I have a lot of tools to use to help with nervous system regulation. The one that I love the most is called brain spotting. And it's kind of like an offshoot of EMDR, if you've ever heard of EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And what I like to tell my clients is I can't change the situation that you're in, right? I can't change the fact that this guy's a fucking asshole. He's going to continue to try to terrorize your life, especially if you share children with this person. We can't fix that. We can't make that different. We can't make what you've been through different, but we can change how you feel moving forward. We can make it so that your nervous system is regulated enough that you are healed, that you are operating at your highest self and your best self so that you can move forward with your life. So kind of, again, going back to not being able to change this person. I can't change that he's going to text you and call you a fucking bitch and a cunt. But I can change, and we can work on healing. And so that when you pick up your phone and you read that message, it just bounces right off of you. And you're like, he's an asshole, and put it down and not go into fight or flight, not go into full panic mode, not get derailed from the day and have to call out of work and, miss so many parts and pieces of your life and your children's life because your nervous system is still fucked up from this person. That's where brain spotting comes in. And it is a incredibly powerful therapeutic modality and tool. I also do IFS, which is parts work. And I find that's really helpful for my clients as well. So I do, like I said, offer one-on-one coaching. I also have the course that I've created that's on sale. You can access it through the link in my bio. And that I encourage people to work through that first because it saves them time and money. It's less expensive than working with me one-on-one for 4 sessions. So it kind of encapsulates those first few sessions that I would spend kind of educating and, reviewing things that can just be done on your own, in a course format. So.
Oh, that is so cool. Those, you sound awesome. You have all the letters too. And you're a baddie and own your cuntness. When they call you a cunt, thank them. Thank you. Yeah, I am a fucking cunt. I am.
I don't disagree.
Okay.
I really sure. Yeah, I come from a long line of cunts, actually. I really do truly believe that I was burnt at the stake and I am back.
Hell yeah.
to like dismantle things, you
Yes.
know, like on a greater scale. I think there's like a larger purpose that, like you said earlier, a greater shift and movement to like, you know, we're done with this. You know, since the beginning of time, women have like been oppressed and been in these types of relationships, and, you know, we're over it.
We are done. We are done being silent. And like, we want to sit, we need to sit, and it's like, we are crowning our chaos. We're the queens, and you're just the mayor of dictum. I mean, that's it. That's what it is. So we stand and we rule. And we're not doing it to like be radical feminists, but it's radical acceptance. It's radical, like, let's do it. We need to stand up and be strong and speak out. And I love that you're on this journey with me and you're part of the Bestie Gang. And I would love for you to join my little club. And there's no initiation fee. There's nothing like really you have to do yet. But we are the BFFs. We are bitches fighting for freedom. So I would love you to be our new BFF.
Ooh. I would love to join.
Yay. Listen, we have a new bestie in the Bestie Gang. And you were part of the MILF Mafia, but now you're not in litigation anymore. So that's good. There's graduations happening. We'll move your tassel from MILF Mafia, mothers in litigation forever, to just a straight up BFF.
Yay.
I love you. I'm so incredibly grateful to you for coming back and sharing your story. And we're just getting started. I really believe this, that we've got some really cool things to do. So what is your Instagram one more time, so anyone listening right now can find Quinn?
Yes, it's Quinn Padilla. So it's Quinn, Quinn, Padilla, Padilla.
Thank you so much. We will be talking off the show, continuing, and we'll have you back. And thank you again for joining us on this episode of Bitch is a Bad Word. I absolutely loved our conversation with Quinn, and please just know that we are just getting started. We're going to keep having her back on because she's just such a baddie. If this episode like resonates with you, if you like Bitch is a Bad Word, please do go like, share, subscribe, and review so that we can keep this Bestie Gang growing and building the audience, spreading the word, not being silent. There is no safety in staying silent. If you or your kids or anybody in your life is in immediate danger, remember, use 911, crash on a friend's couch, do whatever you have to do to get safe. The hotline.org is available to you. You can call them 1-800-799-7233. That's 1-800-799-START. You can reach out on the hotline.org 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Their besties are standing by. It's confidential. They've answered over 7 million calls. If this isn't an epidemic, I don't know what is. And we are here to get loud and break the silence. If you're in Southern California, the BFF Alliance is there for you. Reach out to them on bffalliance.org. They have partnered with One Safe Place, and they are a resource for you in Southern California. Talking Parents is where it's at. Go to talkingparents.com, put it in your parenting app. But take a look. Talking Parents is an amazing resource for you. Send me your texties from your exties. Reach out. Share your story with me on Instagram at bitchesabadwordpod. You can send me your DMs. I answer them all myself. You can reach out to us on TikTok and YouTube at bitchesabadword. We have a phone number, 331-BITCHES. You can leave us a voicemail, send me a text, and we'd love to share your story on the show. And we love you. We've got your back. Thank you for joining us. And remember Patreon, patreon.com/bitchesabadword. We have a big, badass Bestie Gang building over there. There's free tiers, there's paid tiers that have all sorts of cool like merch drops and discounts and ad-free listening. But it's an amazing community. So do go check them out as you rebuild your network and your net worth. We're here for you. We'll drop everything about Quinn's show in the show notes. And you can follow along the Bitch is a Bad Word journey on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else you listen to your podcasts. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next Tuesday, besties. Our editor is Kevin Mackler. Our music was composed by Drew Kevorkian. Our art design was created by Eric Johnson and Kevin Roche. Our interns are baddies. Patreon is run by Kay, and this has been a Caliber Studios production. Bitches being bad.